So the recap is that on the Spring introduction, whatever we have done is that you need to have an XML file defined. You can name anything. Here in this case, it is spring.xml, and the way I'm defining the beans is that first just some just to build up some virtual flow. What I'm doing is I'm having three different layers. One is the connection manager, which will take care of JDBC connection, assumed to be, supposed to be. So bean ID connection manager, and I'm giving the complete class equal to this is what you need to do. There is no other way you need to do this. Spring Framework defines this. It's a configuration file where whatever you define here, it is going to work. And then employee DAO, I'm defining a bean called employee DAO, and the class is this, hold on. The class is in CareerScale training Spring DAO employee DAO IMPL, and this has, if we look at the code implementation wise, this has something called connection manager. So I am having a set method here, okay, but there is no new operator here. I did not use any new operator. I am not creating JDBC connection manager at all in my code. Who is going to do that? I let the Spring to do that. So, and how does Spring inject that particular thing into my class? So I provide, remember this, I need to provide a set method. And whatever this is there, set connection manager, okay, this property. From here, I'm selecting, connection manager alone. Starting with C as a small letter, you need to have that as a property. So what Spring will do is that it will call, on this class employee DAO IMPL, on this class object, it will create an object, and then it says that that particular whatever created object is there, say DAO, suppose DAO dot set connection manager. It is going to call this method. This method name is very, very important. This should match before the set is not required, but not required in the Spring.xml, but this one connection manager term is required. So let me just post it here. Okay, connection manager should be a property defined here, starting with a small letter, right? So let me just say this. Okay, I'm just pasting that here and make this say as a small letter. So what Spring will do is that it is going to call, if when you whatever properties you declare, what it will do, first it will create employee DAO IMPL object, okay, and then it will call the setter methods for all the properties. So in this case, set connection manager and set connection manager. So that means that it is going to call. I'll just just for set connection manager. It is going to call this. Okay, Spring will call. Okay, on employee DAO object. Okay, first it creates. Spring will create employee DAO object from the class given, and will call the set connection manager on the employee object to set the connection manager. Object. But where will we get this connection manager object? We get this connection manager object from this ref, this thing. Okay, so when I'm saying ref means reference object. What is the reference object? So you look at reference object equal ref equal to connection manager. That means it is going to look into this particular file. It is going to look at this configuration, see whether I have any object, any bean defined with this name. Okay, fine. Bean ID equal to connection manager. So I found a bean. With this name. So I'm going to call set connection manager on the employee DAO with the object of connection manager object from the other bean that is that is defined in this Spring XML. Suppose by chance, if I say this, where is my application? I'm giving a wrong name there. So how it is going to behave? See here, no bean named connection manager 1 is defined. It is going to throw an exception. If by chance, if I give a wrong name here in the reference, it says no bean named connection manager 1 is defined. So now I removed that, I rectified, I removed the one added at the end, and if I run the application code now, it's going to work. Why? Because it should be able to find, when I give reference, it should be able to find it. It should be able to find it. So the setter method is very, very important here, not the variable name. If I look at this can be anything. Suppose I just name, I'll revert this change, but I'll just name like this. Okay, so the code will still work. The code will still work. This is an important thing that you should understand. This is an important thing that you should understand. The code still will work because the variable name is not important. The variable name is not important. What is really important is the set method, because Spring does not know anything about how your internal structure of your implementation is going to be. What it only knows is the public methods, and within the public methods you need to have whatever like here, whatever property name I am mentioning here, there must be a set method in the particular implementation. Set connection manager. As long as this method is going to be there, it will work. This variable name, it can be there in any name. It can be, you can just name private JDBC connection manager A. It still will work. Okay. So the method, set method is very, very important. Set method is very, very important. But general practice, what we do is that we always try to if you are doing set connection manager, then your property also going to be connection manager, starting with the C. So effectively, it's not a mandatory that you have to do like this, but we generally tend to do, try to match things. So effectively, what it means that this connection manager property and here the property name, both of them will match. Both of them will match. But it is not mandatory that your private property of your implementation class should match with the property name given in the string XML. It is not mandatory at all. The setter method in your implementation and the property name in the string.xml, as long as they match, it is sufficient. As long as it matches, it is sufficient. So, right. So that means that, now this is how the Spring dependency injection happens. So dependency injection is something that how there are a couple of things within that, I've been repeating this. First thing is how bean creation happens. Spring works as a factory. Spring works as a factory, and then Spring also injects the dependencies. How? It will inject the dependencies based on the configuration. Okay. So here I'm saying property name equal to connection manager, or in this case I'm saying property name is DAO. So it will go to the employee manager implementation. First it will create, if you look at this, anything of this, it's going to create that particular object first. Okay. That means that employee manager IMPL it is going to create, and then it will check, okay, this has a property called DAO, and what I need to implement, I need to actually give this, fill the value from another bean named employee DAO. So it will create that, it will go by hierarchy, in the sense whatever is the basic element, it will create that first. Now in this flow, what Spring will do is that, at the time of loading, it understand the references. So what is the bare minimum thing? First thing is connection manager. Then you have to have employee DAO. Employee DAO needs connection manager, and then employee manager needs DAO. So the way it loads beans is not, it will not load the Spring employee manager first. It will not load it. It will not load the employee manager first, rather it will load employee, and as per this hierarchy, first, employee manager depends on employee DAO because of this property, and employee DAO depends on connection manager, and connection manager does not depend on anything. So this is the lowest minimum object. So it is going to depend, first it will load connection manager, then it will load DAO, then it will load employee manager. So if you look at, employee manager IMPL, what we have is employee DAO. The object name is DAO. Just that, we were looking at employee here, employee DAO IMPL, and similarly, employee manager also has very similar thing. DAO here, the property. Fine. This is how these things happen. So Spring, what it does is, Spring framework will you need to initialize it, and all the configuration is done in an XML file. This is the basic thing, okay? And now with the latest versions, you don't need, with Java 7 and all, with post Java 7, when Spring latest version, basically like it is like, I think with Spring 3.0, you don't need to have these things defined like this. Meaning XML file is not mandatory. You can write annotations and it's going to work. So, but we will not worry about the annotations part now. Rather, that what we are trying to understand is that the basic Spring framework fundamentals. Basic Spring framework fundamentals is that it's actually like, it's basically a bean factory. Meaning a factory, Spring is a factory that it is creating factory because it is creating objects. It is going to create objects internally. We don't know how. If you look at this code, we don't know where Spring is using new operator, right? So, but it is going to create the objects. It's going to use some reflections API and all that, and it's going to create that, and then it is going to inject the dependencies. How? We just know, we have seen the how it is going to inject the dependencies. With the setter method approach, it is going to inject the dependencies. And if you look at only object creation alone, let me go to this particular book and explain this. We'll go to, there are a few other things that are important. Come on, paste down. So wiring, one moment. How Spring is going to do this particular thing is that, suppose there will be situations where you may need some constructor. You have your constructor, bare minimum thing. So far, if you look at it, I don't have constructors defined in the implementation classes. I don't have any beans that has any constructor. So fundamental thing is that Java, if you don't have any constructor defined, it is going to assume a default constructor with no parameters. Okay. So what I'll do is that I'll actually, just to have simulate this situation, I'm going to have a constructor defined. So for this particular thing, private, no, not the private, it will not understand what I do there. Okay, say suppose string connection string, suppose. Okay, and maybe I'll have connection, okay, equal to null here, and I say this dot connection equal to connection string. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to have a constructor for JDBC connection manager IMPL, right? So, and then let me run this program. My constructor, this is a factory, initial factory that I created, so that is also going to break, so I'm just fixing it. JDBC connection string. I just write, some dummy text. Now, fine. What I'll do is that I'll just run run this particular thing. Look at this. I just added a constructor to the connection manager class, and come on, and this throws an exception. See here, it says bean instantiation exception, and by the way, as a matter of fact, you do a silly mistake, it is going to throw up a big exception stack trace, and it says, let's read this. Exception in the thread main says bean creation exception, error creating bean name employee manager from spring.xml, cannot resolve employee DAO while setting the bean property DAO. I mean, while it is for manager, it is trying to create DAO, and while creating DAO, it has faced the error that what error it is, cannot resolve reference to the connection manager. It is going to have nested this behavior, in the sense it is trying to create employee manager that needs DAO, that needs connection manager. So if you have a problem in the connection manager, so there is a problem with the connection manager, so obviously that means that you have a problem with the DAO, and that means you have a problem with the manager, right? It is going to throw all these layers, and then exception stack trace is going to be big. So, but there's nothing to be scared of. You need to just understand, okay, and read that exception message and go till end. It's a simple thing. If I just look at this line alone, I'll go to the end. I'll see what is this. The message, see here, simple. At the end it says no default constructor is found. Java.lang. No such method exception. Okay, there is no constructor defined, so the Spring is going to get some no such method exception for the constructor, because you did not mention anything on how to create this object. By default, you did not mention any connection, constructor arguments in the XML. So what we can do is constructor arguments. So I'll just say dummy, or like string, or like say array value, I'll say dummy JDBC connection string. Okay, and also, like, to make sure that it is actually getting it, I'll just print this. Okay, the JDBC connection string is, okay, and I put this dot connection. Okay, let us see how it is going to work now. Okay, see here, the JDBC connection string is, it's going to print now, and it is working fine. That is because if you have a constructor for your bean implementation and you don't have any default constructor, Spring is going to throw an exception. If there is any such requirement that you have your constructor needing some parameters, okay, that will be a problem. So then this is how you solve it with the Spring. This is how, when you specify constructor arguments in the XML file, and Spring is going to use that and create the constructor. And suppose, let me give one extra parameter, and what it is going to do, I did a copy paste simply. Again it is going to throw an error. See here, why? Because there is no constructor. Sorry, what is the problem here? There seems to be another problem. Invalid content, there is no child element expected. Okay, I guess I must be doing this repeatedly. Okay, so I'm actually, what I'm doing is that for each of the I'm actually giving one extra constructor argument and trying to see how its behavior is going to work. Error creating, and again you look at this, it starts with error. Now error creating this in could not resolve matching constructor. Hint, specify index type name arguments for simple parameter, avoid ambiguities. So there is an error. It says that it is not able to find a matching constructor, because I am trying to give two parameters here, and in my actual one I just have only one. So there is some logic around how we create objects in specific scenarios. But as a general practice, what we tend to do is that we don't do too much of constructor initialization. So, but I thought, it will make sense to inform you that what exists in Spring Framework. So that's why I'm doing it. So there are another ways. There is something else that we can learn here is that for the dependencies, auto-wire default need to be auto-wire default auto-wire equal to what are the other values by name by type. Yep. So now what I'm going to do is that let me just this property thing connection manager alone. Okay, so what I will do is that not this particular guy, I'll do for the other guy. I'll not define this, seems to be fine. What I will do is that because I wrote the description as well, so what here I'll do is auto-wire equal to, I'll say by type, and I'm not going to specify. Will this work? Let me do it short. It's going to work. See here, what is really happening is for the employee manager, I removed this part I removed. So there's something called, how is this wiring happening? I mentioned that, earlier I mentioned as a rule, as if it is a rule, I mentioned that the property name and the setter method's name should match. I told you that. But now there is a lot more than that. If I don't want to do that, okay, if I don't want to do that, what I can say is that, there are various properties that are, this is called auto wiring. When you don't want to do that, you can auto wire, in the sense auto depend. The dependency injection can happen automatically. How? There are various ways you can do it. One is by name. By name means, when I say by name, it's going to look at, in the employee manager, what are the properties that you are having, the setter methods, and if you have, say, some last thing is, let me go to the employee manager, and what is that I have? DAO, set DAO. So name is DAO here. So it will say by name. When I say by name, it will go to look at, do I have any bean? Now this is going to be interesting, okay, because this is going to fail now, because I run this, I'm sure it is going to fail. Okay, Java null pointer exception, because okay, so but then to fix this, what I can do is create something called DAO, just a DAO, and now see, it's going to work. See here, it nicely worked. The reason is the way how there are multiple ways you can wire or you can inject the dependencies. One is by using simplest approach is by using these properties. You specify the properties. Okay. Otherwise, other thing is by name. By name, when I say by name, so employee manager IMPL is having what are the setter methods it has set DAO. Okay. So now if I have a bean in the class, if I have a bean in the class in the XML file with the same name as DAO, forget about this. When you say set DAO, you look at only the property name. Now here it is DAO. Okay. So it's going to look at whether I have any bean with the name DAO. Now fine, I have one. So it's going to directly call the setter method with this thing. It's going to do automatically. I don't need these properties. I commented this line. Okay. And other value is that by type. By type means it will look at the actual implementation class and says, okay, I am implementing employee DAO. Okay, the set DAO takes employee DAO. Is there any bean in the XML? It will look at in the XML file. Is there any bean that is of the type employee DAO? Okay, and it will try to see. Okay, employee DAO and DAO, both of them are there. So if there are more than one, there will be a problem. If there is more than one, there will be a problem. It is supposed to throw an exception. Okay. No unique bean of type. I'm not sure whether you guys are getting me or not, but if you don't understand, please pay attention. So no unique bean of the type employee DAO is found. That is because I defined two of them. Now let me comment this. Okay. When I comment this and try to run this again, now how many beans are there which implement employee DAO interface? Only one bean. That is employee DAO, because employee DAO IMPL implements employee DAO interface, right? So let me run this again. Perfect. It works, right? So auto wire by type, we looked at by name. By constructor. By constructor means that you have a constructor, it's going to inject from the constructors. It's going to inject by the, say employee manager IMPL is going to have a constructor, and whatever arguments you are going to take from there, and it works from the constructor approach. Okay. So now, but primarily we use, we generally mostly at least what the way I do is that, I live with this. This is perfect for me. No ambiguities, because here my property name is DAO, where in the employee manager IMPL. In the employee manager IMPL, my property name is DAO. That means that set DAO method is there, and what bean I am injecting? I am injecting another bean with the ID employee DAO, and that is pretty much here. Then it looks cool to me. Basically because it is understandable and I know where to search for. Okay, this is a property DAO and reference is DAO and employee DAO. So I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll copy this. Suppose if it's a very big file and I just search for it. Is there any bean with the ID? Okay, I got it. That's how you need to work. Okay, so I think we got a better understanding of Spring framework. So what I'll do is that maybe we will I'll stop this training now. We'll catch up again in another session. So, well, just let me extend this training a little bit by talking about different DI tools, dependency injection tools. Not just the Spring framework. There are so many things out there, and many people miss this simple fact. If I have a very simple project, maybe that I'll prefer to go with a Pico container and Nano container. Things are very lightweight. Other frameworks like Spring, there are other frameworks available from Google. It is called Google Juice, Pico container, Nano container. Maybe there are some other frameworks as well. But I just wanted to bring to your attention that there exist so many things. It is not that Spring is the only thing that you can have in the world. There are other frameworks, and yeah, it's up to the project requirement. It is a very simple requirement, not heavy thing. Maybe you can use one of the other alternatives for the Spring framework. Of course, it's a preference at the end. So that's it from this session.